Welcome to Adeptus On-Air, the show where we examine how individuals and companies make decisions that drive their business and personal success. Each week, we connect with notable professionals who pull back the curtain on the industries that Adeptus has been on the cutting edge of for the last 30 years, including music, sports, and entertainment, as well as new emerging markets.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Adeptus On-Air. I am your host again, Mike Hoffman. And today, I am happy to be joined by Sonia Iris Lozada. Sonia, how you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me.
No, I appreciate you coming on. So Sonia is the host of the Poetic Resurrection podcast. Did I say that correctly?
Resurrection.
Yes, Resurrection has been working for years on a whole bunch of different poetry over time, and want to kind of get to that and want to hear all about your journey. So again, we appreciate you coming on and talking to us for a little bit.
Yes, thank you.
No, sure. So at what point, different people have different passions, I guess, from at early ages in life. For some, it's, more creative, and obviously poetry falls under the umbrella of creative. So for you, was it poetry from the beginning, or was it I like to read and write and it kind of morphed into poetry? Like, what was the process to get you into writing poetry?
Well, I've been writing poetry since I was a little kid. It was actually, I grew up bicultural, so it was my way of dealing with two totally different cultures.
Sure.
And so I've been doing that. I've also been an entertainer for a long time. Mm-hmm. So poetry is something that I used to write and throw in a drawer so nobody would read it because it was very personal to me.
Yeah.
And just less than 10 years ago, I decided, I have all this poetry. Let me work on it. Let me edit it, send it to an editor to review, and then put it out there. And it was very difficult because I said, this is where people get to know who I really am. And I didn't know if I wanted them to know that yet.
Yeah. Well, that's what I hear. I've talked to some other people who do poetry, and I guess most poets are writing to an extent about themselves and their own feelings and their own emotions. Is that fair to say that's how most of yours is based on?
Yes, it's based on life experiences, not just mine, but things that influenced me. Mm-hmm. I have a poem called Forget, and it's about a woman that was in our building, and her husband would beat her up all the time. And so, I wrote about her, like and I was a little kid watching this. So I wrote about her. I write about personal things. I also write some comedy because, I'm not all that serious all the time.
Yeah. So obviously your passions are in the creative arts in general, because, you have done some acting as well.
Yes.
So how do you, let's go back. So when you're in high school, I imagine you were one of the, the creative art kids, whether it's through the drama club or creative writing clubs and stuff like that.
Yes.
At that point in time, did you know you wanted to go this route, or at that point was it just a hobby and a passion?
Well, I come from a musical family. On my mom's side, they're all musicians and singers and stuff like that. So that's where I thought I was going to go. I thought I was going to make money on that.
Yeah.
And then a friend of mine, when I moved to Los Angeles, he was quite a bit older. He had a heart attack and said, I will give you free acting lessons if you just come over, because I'm so bored being at home. And he wasn't allowed to drive because he had an A-type personality.
Sure.
And that's where I got bit. I started doing acting, and for all the years I was doing music, because I was using my poetry in the music. I was writing lyrics.
So I was going to ask you that in a second about poetry versus lyrics in a second. We'll get to that.
Yes. And so then I started acting, and I'm actually have been on a couple of TV shows and commercials and plays, and I still do that to this day.
That's great. That's awesome. So when you graduated high school, did you go to college to study something else, or at that point?
Yeah, I studied something else.
So what?
I studied fashion design because I thought, well, I'll never make it as an entertainer. Yeah. So and then they did the worst thing is they took me to a sweatshop and said, "This is where you're going to work." And I'm like, I'm going to college to work in a sweatshop.
Right.
Maybe that's not true for everybody, but
Yeah.
that's what they showed me.
Yeah.
And I ended up working at the American Film Institute. And then I said, you know what? If they can do it, why can't I?
Yeah. Yeah. Of
And
course.
so I started pursuing my acting and my singing then. And I've actually been more successful at the acting part than at the singing part.
Yeah. So let's talk about the acting, because you've actually been on a lot of things. I looked at your IMDb and a lot of things that people would recognize. So why don't you talk about some of the highlights of that?
Well, my last show that I was recurring on was Bosch Legacy, which unfortunately just got canceled. But the third season will come out in March. And so it's only a 10 episode season.
Yep.
And I'm in a couple of them on that one. And, I do commercials. I do a lot of TV more than anything.
Yeah. So what are some of the shows? I believe I saw, and correct me if I'm wrong, NYPD Blue.
That was really good. That one, they were so fine-tuned. It's like, you come in at this time, we shoot, we're done, goodbye. Yeah, I did ER. ER was my first network show when George Clooney was still on there.
So did you act with any of the regulars in your scene, or?
Oh yeah. My scene was a season finale episode. And George Clooney's father, which he had a problem with all this time because he was an alcoholic and everything, he ends up killing my husband in a car accident. And so the scene was all in being in the church. And so that was interesting.
So what's the process for that? Like, obviously you have an agent and so forth like that to get a part like that. Because I've talked to actors and actresses who have like a recurring role in a show, so it's a different process. What's the process for you to do like a one-off episode, like in terms of from when you're contacted to when you're actually filming?
Well, lately it's been all self-tape, and it has its good points and its bad points because you could redo it over and over again and send in your best copy. Sure. But at the same time, when you're with a casting director, they might adjust you because they know what the production is looking for.
Yes.
So it's been mostly self-tape, and then they usually hire you from the self-tape.
Oh, really? So there's not even necessarily discussions with you or meeting you in person. So the first time they're meeting you is when you're coming into film.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like when I got on Bosch Legacy, the nicest crew. That was an incredible place. I was so disappointed that the show got canceled, but it was, everybody was just really nice. You know, it was an easy place to work. You did your job, or you said hello. I've done quite a few TV shows. I had a dry spell for a while, and I thought that I was going to leave acting. I do some meditations. I'm a teacher on Inside Timer. And so I've gone and, I did one of my episodes on Poetic Resurrection was grieving dreams, because you could love something, but, at what point do you give up if you're not making money?
Right.
And so I went through that, and it was very heartbreaking. But then I said, you know what, if it comes my way, I love it. I'll do it. And it's weird taking off that stress of needing to pay the bills and wanting to make a career out of it and all of that. I ended up booking more because now I'm just doing it for fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking to a lot of creatives, and I'll put you in that umbrella. A lot of them have said, when money is not on their mind, they're more productive in the creative aspect. So for some, it might be having a regular 9-to-5 job and then doing the creatives, nighttime, weekends, things like that, or being like some kind of independent consultant where you work for 3 months, make some money doing something, and then the next 3-4 months of your life you've kind of made the money to keep you going. You can kind of focus on the creative aspect and not worry about, oh my God, this poem has to sell, or this book has to be, I have to sign with a with a publisher or something like that.
Yeah, because right now I'm working on, I believe for a while is my last installment of Inspire Me. It's a poetic collection. It's a series.
Yeah.
And the first one was Inspire Me Raw. The second was Inspire Me Perception. Then I did a compilation with a little bit of a few of the poems that are coming out of my next book, which is Inspire Me Awakening Dreams. And I have a huge collection of of poems
Yeah.
that I could actually keep, write, rewrite, and put into another book. But my attention is going more towards, after this book is out, I've been writing a lot of sci-fi.
Okay.
And that's, that's part of me. I have the surrealism when I write my poetry and I write my stories. And so I've been getting a lot of those stories to come up. So I go, well, maybe that's a direction I need to follow. And I follow wherever my creative mind wants to go. I don't say, no, I have to do a poetry book. I just go with the flow.
Well, all right. So let's go back to that process for a second. So your poetry writing, I mean, is it a situation where you're going to be like, and I think I know the answer to this, so it might sound like a stupid question. All right, today I'm going to sit down and write some poems. Or is it something just comes into your head, you're having a thought process, you're going through something in your life, and the words just kind of fall out of your mind onto paper?
Yes. A lot of my poetry and stories come from dreams or meditation, because that's when you quiet the mind, and your creativity just knows how to jump up and say, hey, I have this idea, I have that. Right. But when you're thinking of your everyday, like I do half and half when it comes to work. I work for a company, and then the other half of the time I do my poetry and my acting and all of that, or in between, because if I get a gig and it's during work hours, I'm taking that day off, because you make so much more money in one day in acting than you do at a regular job.
Right.
But so I get it from there. It's more, I get inspired. And when I'm inspired, I write. And so that's why I get a lot of my ideas when I'm dreaming. I mean, the typical writer's thing is that, you wake up at 3 a.m. It's like your mind says, hey, I got an idea, write this down. And you do.
Yeah. Now, so break this down for me into 3 different aspects, because you write poetry. Now you say you're kind of writing sci-fi. Right. And then at the same point in time, you've also said you've done some lyrics for some music. So I imagine
a long time ago.
Okay, so focusing more so on the sci-fi and the poetry because they're more current in your life. What's the differences in the processes for both?
I find poetry, since I've been doing that for so long, and my sci-fi is short stories, is that it's simpler because you condense your emotions into one. When I first write poetry, it really is terrible. I mean, it's like all subject verb. I did this, I feel that, blah, blah, blah. But I write it down because when I'm trying to capture when I write is the emotion. And then, because the emotion I find drives the story. That'll drive the poem. It'll drive the short story. So if I could capture that while I'm writing my rough draft on it, then the rest of it is grammar and, like letting people know where you're at and what it looks like.
Yeah.
So that's how I get inspired. I write it, and it just flows. And if it doesn't flow, I'll do a meditation to quiet my mind, because that's my mind getting frustrated again because I'm not coming up with the right words or the right line.
Yeah.
And then I just continue, or I put it down. I'm not on a race. I mean, there's not a publisher I have to answer to. I publish my own stuff.
Right. And with the sci-fi?
The sci-fi, I'm thinking of looking for an actual publisher for that one.
Yeah. So when you're writing a story, and even though it's a short story and not a novel, I'm always fascinated by this. And I want to be clear, I am the opposite of you in the sense of I was never a reader. Poetry was not my thing. Never wanted any interest in writing or anything like that. But when you're writing a short story, and again, we can all define what short story means. Are you writing it as you're going along? Are you coming up with the story, or do you know where you want to get to, and it's just a matter of all the the peaks and valleys of the characters to get there?
Oh, I wish I had an answer for that one. What happens with me is that the story just comes to me. I almost feel like I cheat because I'm just writing down what I'm seeing in my mind's eye.
Right.
And then I have to fill it in. Like there was a poetry book I have called Follow. And this one was all about, I kept having all these weird dreams, and it was all like period pieces. Like someone, like all I saw a potter, and he's making his pottery on a wheel. And he was so sad, but the colors in it were beautiful, like fire colors, like gold and blue and all that. And then I saw the date 300 BC. So I'm like, okay, let me see what was happening in 300 BC, because I captured the emotion and I really wanted to write something about it. And I went to South America, I went to Europe, I went to Africa. And when I got to the terracotta soldiers in China, I went, that's it. And then I started doing a lot of research on it. So I normally get inspired by bits and pieces, and then I just put them together by doing some research.
Right. Now, something like sci-fi, this sounds silly. Sci-fi can be whatever you want it to be. It's not real, it's fantasy. So when you talk about maybe doing some research, what are you...
You know what I do for research? Because I learned, and I didn't know this because I didn't know the difference between fantasy and sci-fi. And fantasy is made up, totally made up. And they describe sci-fi as being probable.
Okay.
Think of Jules Verne with the submarines and the airplanes that he wrote about decades, before anything happened. And so what I do, and people are always asking, do you read a lot? I'm like, I do, but I read stuff like NASA, what planets they're discovering. I read stuff about, what's happening in space. Then I go to the flip side and I see what spiritually people are talking about. And then I do a combination. I try to find something that merges together between those two.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of, because there is nothing. If you're making up your own planet or whatever, there is nothing there. But how can it be probable? How can
Agreed. Yeah. That's kind of my point with that, is when I think sci-fi, and again, you're probably like, why am I talking to you? Just as I'm in poetry, sci-fi is very much out of my realm as well. Like the Star Treks and the Star Wars. I'm probably the only kid who grew up in the 80s and in the 70s who never saw a Star Wars movie. Because
really?
Yes. And I've never seen a Harry Potter movie, just because, at least for me, I need some semblance of reality when I'm watching something. So wizards or, lightsabers and stuff like that, to me, is just so far and beyond. It's just not my thing. So, but then again, I also want to be entertained. So I kind of contradict myself, but those things to me just aren't entertaining. But then, I remember going and seeing Independence Day, which is obviously, the world being taken by aliens. So obviously, as probably as unrealistic, in my opinion, as it gets. But to me, that was just different to me because we were dealing with humans, and the humans kind of working together to kind of beat an enemy. So to me, that's where the realistic nature came in. Whereas wizards and sorcerers or people, the Chewbacca's and the R2-D2s of the world, like to me, that was just so far and above, reality. So I have trouble kind of buying into that myself.
Yeah. You know what? And you have to have, like, the writer has to be so creative to come up with that. And
agreed.
Yeah. And if you think about it, everything that I find in sci-fi is already here in terms of, if you look at the aliens, they look like some of the creatures we have on Earth. They were just made more humanoid. And, so bringing all that together, my sci-fi is not about war or anything like that. It's more of a psychological sci-fi, if I could describe it. It's what if, and I realized that what if in life is a terrible thing, because you'll never get anything done if you're always saying, what if this happened?
Right. Oh, exactly.
But when it comes to storytelling, it's great. What if, this rock would fall on this, and how would it change something? And what if the earth shifted for like 1 inch? We'd all be gone. Honestly, if it just quickly shifted 1 inch. Right. But it's what if? You take what and which I do. I'm taking what I know in my stories. I love psychology. I love
Okay.
that mind trip.
Sure. Though, yeah.
Yeah. So what if you stretch it?
Well, that's exactly what it is. You're stretching, and again, I think, as a parent, when you have younger kids, you want them to use their imagination and you
Yes.
want them to come up with things. And I think that's awesome. And I think for a kid to be into that is just fantastic. It's me, and it's more me. Because listen, I have a lot of friends who go to all these movies with these, super, so I'm probably in the minority. But,
Yeah.
to me, at some point, just the realm of that was just, wait a minute, what are we doing here? But I think I like what you're saying, though. You're kind of taking the realm of realism, for lack of a better word, and you're just kind of stretching it a little bit.
Yes. Yes. And it's you add that what if.
Yeah.
And you look at science, there's so much that's being done.
Yeah.
They already have lasers that can cut things and work and do all. They already have that. So you're just stretching it and making it a saber, so.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. That's why I love reading actual science, and I'm fascinated by physics. And so I use that as with it. And there's so much that's going on right now. And I think I find it fascinating that we've actually know how to make something move with sound.
Yeah.
And
it really is amazing when you think about what people can do with science or technology, and certain things. And you think back, to our childhoods and what we thought was pretty cool. And now you look at it like, oh my God, how primitive was that? Whether it was a video game you were playing, or think about a cell phone. Remember when cordless phones first came out? You're like, oh my God, I'm going to stand by a wall.
And they were like huge.
And they were with the antenna. And then you had to go to certain areas of the house because with the antenna, you had to like stick it out the window sometimes to get right. And now you look at that and you're like, oh my God, what do you mean you still have a phone in your house?
Yeah. And I remember when you only got 30 minutes. Your monthly,
right?
You paid all this money to get 30 minutes that you could use your cell phone for.
Right. Yeah. You had plans and things like that. And so obviously things have, progressed. And I know we've had discussions, I've had it with people, when you're just like, BSing with people. It's like, imagine everything now that we think is so, oh my God, imagine in 20 years or 30 years.
It is amazing how much
with AI and stuff like that,
Yeah, it's kind of scary with AI.
I agree with you.
I'm a writer, and where's that? It's scary for me as an actor. Someone could copy my voice and use it for something, and I'm a voiceover actor. I'm represented by voiceover, by print, TV, and commercial and film. Yeah. So, and using my likeness, you just took a job away from me. And
agreed. Yeah.
But I do use it because, like, I will write copy for my podcast, and then I put it through them to correct the grammar. And instead of me like trying to write for an hour trying to correct it, I just put it through there. And then I correct that because sometimes I don't even know where they get the information from when they rewrite something.
Right. Yeah. But it's true nowadays. I mean, and unfortunately, it's also because of all the dishonesty in the world. And you'll see a picture now and you don't even know if it's a real picture because of how people can edit things and things like that. Or, how do I know that you're you right now? Because someone could easily so that's where it's scary because all these people are being so brilliant with what they're creating.
Yeah.
But just as brilliant as those are, the people that are trying to use it for no good, evil, whatever you want to use for their own benefit, are just as smart.
Yeah, and sometimes even smarter because they find that that's more lucrative than going clean.
Yeah.
But it has to be something within you. What's important to you?
No, exactly.
Money is not the most. Obviously, I'm a poet and an actor. Money is not the most important thing to me.
Right.
To me, is being content. I don't, want to get and I'm not materialistic. I had a friend of mine that wanted a really fancy refrigerator. I go, what's wrong with that one? And she has a nice one to begin with. She goes, nothing. I go, you want to spend like $10,000 on a fancy refrigerator?
Right.
I go, what are you going to do on your deathbed? Are you going to say, oh, I remember that fancy refrigerator? No,
Right.
You remember your memories and the things you've done and the people you've known.
Correct.
And that's a goal for me. I don't want to say shoulda, coulda, woulda. I want to say I tried, even if I failed, but I did it. I went that way. I followed something that I thought my soul needed to do or my mind needed to do. I didn't want to have regrets.
Hey, I think it's a great mindset to have. So how do you see your next 5 to 10 years of your life from a creative standpoint going? Like, where would you like to see it go? Would it be to publish some sci-fis? Would it be just to focus on the poetry, continue the acting? Because obviously, you have your hands in a lot of different baskets.
Yes. I would like my sci-fi. I'm writing as short stories, and I have some previous short stories that I'm rewriting because I originally wrote them as treatments. And treatments are like short stories to see if I could sell it.
Yeah.
And so that's when I visualize something that's like sci-fi, I visualize it like a film. And so if I would love to be able to sell some of the stories.
Sure.
And see that materialize and just keep doing my acting. I mean, I would actually love to travel and be on the road more. Like right now I'm on the road. I'm not at home. I'm staying at a hotel by the ocean. And it's like, I walk out the door and there's the ocean. It's just a bit overcast here today.
Yeah. Where are you? May I ask?
I am in, it's in Ventura County. It's beautiful out here. It's, do you know Los Angeles area?
A little bit. I've been out there several times, but yeah, not probably as well as you do.
Well, most people are familiar with Malibu. So if you know where Malibu is, it's right on the ocean, but it's north. This place is probably about an hour north of that.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's a nice, tranquil place to be. We want to just my friend said, hey, I got a 2-bedroom hotel room. You want to come? I'm like, sure.
Why not? I'm here.
Yeah.
So
yes, exactly.
You talked to me briefly about how people can find your podcast and see you on social media platforms.
Yes. My podcast is Poetic Resurrection, and it has to deal more. This season we're doing literary fiction because I started it when the pandemic started, and I was not going to go March, but I noticed that the people that I didn't agree with, they were, I saw fear. So I go, how awful it is to live in fear. So let me do a podcast about perceptions and being. And that one's called Poetic Resurrection. I also have one because that one got a little heavy. That's why I'm doing literary fiction. And it's total entertainment. It's called Overheard at Chica's Cafe. And it's just fun. I just interview my friends on it. And we just talk about everything. I've had some Tony Award winners on there. So it doesn't necessarily mean famous people, but my friends.
Right. People you enjoy talking to and you have some good dialogue.
If they're successful, even better.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Absolutely. No, I said absolutely. If they're successful, but as long as you're getting good dialogue and you're, enjoying the conversation, that's what it's all about.
I've had amazing conversations with people that don't have a book or, that they're just starting in acting. But to me, people's journey is fascinating.
Sure. Yeah. That's what they say. And then Miley said, it's not about, it's all about the climb.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming on. I wish you nothing but continued success with the sci-fi, with the poetry, with any future acting gigs, and, nothing but the best.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for listening, everybody. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On-Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.